People reading, Grandpa's lawyer handed me controlling shares of Harper Global, worth $500 million, 0 cents. My parents snatched them from my grasp and set them ablaze, screaming, "This is what you deserve for betraying us!" I didn't flinch. I just smiled. What they burned was only a shadow of the real power I held. I don't know what woke me first, the low hum of my phone vibrating on the nightstand, or the faint, acrid whiff of something burning. My eyes snapped open, heart already pounding like it knew something I didn't. The Seattle skyline glittered through my apartment window, a cold constellation of glass and steel, but the air inside felt wrong, heavy. I threw off the covers, bare feet hitting the hardwood, and grabbed my phone. 3:47 IEM. A text from an unknown number. "Get out. Now." I froze, fingers hovering over the screen. The smell sharpened. Gasoline, unmistakable, seeping under the door. My pulse spiked, a primal drumbeat urging me to move. I didn't think. I yanked on jeans, shoved my phone and keys into my pocket, and sprinted for the door. The hallway was dark, the building silent except for the hiss of my own breath. I hit the stairwell, taking steps 2 at a time, the metal railing cold under my palm. Somewhere above, a floorboard creaked. Not random. Deliberate. Outside, the pre-dawn air slapped my face, sharp and damp. My car sat across the street, a beat-up Honda Civic I'd bought cash to stay off the grid. I glanced back at the building, its brick facade looming like a tombstone. That's when I saw it, a faint orange glow flickering in the alley near the parking lot. My stomach dropped. I ran, legs burning, keys jangling in my hand. I was 10 feet from the car when the world exploded. The blast threw me forward, asphalt biting into my palms as I hit the ground. A fireball roared behind me, glass shattering, metal screaming. My ears rang, a high-pitched whine drowning out the city's pulse. I scrambled to my knees, coughing, the air thick with smoke and the stench of burning rubber. My car, my only way out, was a twisted skeleton, flames licking its frame. Someone had wanted me dead, and they'd almost succeeded. I didn't wait to see who. I stumbled to my feet, ignoring the sting of scraped skin, and bolted down the street, weaving through shadows. Seattle's industrial district was a maze of warehouses and chain-link fences, perfect for disappearing. Or being disappeared. My phone buzzed again. Another text. "They know you're alive. Keep moving." No signature, no clue who they were, though I had a guess. My family, the Harpers, the people who'd rather see me buried than claim what was mine. I'm Eleanor Harper, Ellie to the few who know me and don't hate me. 32, former corporate strategist, current pariah. 3 years ago, I blew the whistle on Harper Global, my family's tech and real estate empire, exposing their illegal data mining schemes. It cost them millions in fines and me everything else, my job, my savings, my place in the family. They didn't just cut me off, they erased me. My parents, Richard and Vivian, turned my childhood bedroom into a home theater. My sister Cassie used my college fund to launch her startup, and my grandfather William Harper, the only one who ever saw me, died 6 months ago, leaving a void I couldn't fill. Until today. In 3 hours, I was due at his will reading, and something told me the bomb was no coincidence. I ducked into an alley, heart hammering, and checked my phone. No signal. Figures. Whoever sent those texts knew enough to warn me, but not enough to show their face. I leaned against a damp brick wall, catching my breath, the city's pulse a distant hum. The will reading was at 7:00 a.m., at Kessler & Vance, a law firm in downtown Seattle with more security than Fort Knox. If I could make it there, I'd have answers. If I didn't, I'd be a headline by noon. Whistleblower killed in tragic explosion. My family would probably frame it as an accident, maybe even shed a few crocodile tears for the cameras. I started moving again, sticking to side streets, my sneakers silent on the pavement. The city was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling, streetlights flickering off. But I felt like a ghost, slipping through a world that didn't want me. I needed a plan. My apartment was gone, my car was ash, and my bank account was probably frozen by now. The Harpers didn't play small. If they'd rigged a bomb, they'd have covered every angle. Cops, cameras, connections. I was alone, but I wasn't helpless. Not yet. By 5:30 I've made it to a 24-hour diner on the edge of Pioneer Square, the kind of place where nobody asks questions. The neon sign buzzed, casting a sickly glow over cracked vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the 90s. I slid into a corner booth, ordered black coffee, and kept my hood up. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading Barb, I liked her for that. I pulled out my phone, now miraculously showing one bar, and risked a quick search. Harper Global's stock had dipped 3% overnight. No explanation given. My gut twisted. Something big was happening, and I was the only one not in on it. I sipped the coffee, bitter and scalding, and replayed the last 6 months. William's death had hit me harder than I'd admitted. He'd been the one who taught me to code, to question, to stand up. Power doesn't bend, Ellie, he'd said once, his voice rough with years of boardroom battles. It breaks, or you do. I hadn't broken yet, but I was close. 6:45 I paid cash and stepped into the gray dawn. The law firm was a 10-minute walk, but I took a winding route, checking over my shoulder every block. The streets were filling up. Suits heading to work, joggers with AirPods, baristas opening shop. Normal life. I envied it. When I reached Kessler and Vance, the glass tower loomed like a monolith, its reflective surface hiding whatever waited inside. I straightened my jacket, smoothed my hair, and walked through the revolving doors. The security guard barely glanced at my ID. Either I was expected, or someone had paid him not to care. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent, save for the soft ding of passing floors. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked like a stranger. Pale, hollow-eyed, a bruise blooming on my cheek from the blast. I touched it, wincing, and steeled myself. Whatever was coming, I'd face it. For William. For me. The conference room was all polished mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle's skyline sprawling beyond. My family was already there, seated like royalty at a long table. Richard, my father, in a tailored suit, his jaw tight as a coiled spring. Vivian, my mother, in a cream blazer, her pearls glinting like armor. Cassie, my sister, in a sleek black dress, scrolling her phone with a smirk that could cut glass. They didn't look at me as I entered, but the air shifted, heavy with their contempt. I was the traitor, the whistleblower, the one who dared to speak. And now I was here to claim something they thought was theirs. Mr. Kessler, the family lawyer, stood at the head of the table, his silver hair catching the light. He cleared his throat, the sound sharp in the silence. "We're here to execute the final wishes of William James Harper," he began, his voice steady but weighted. "Per his request, all immediate family members are present." He glanced at me, a flicker of something, pity, maybe, crossing his face, before he opened a leather folder. I sat last, in a chair that felt too small, my hands clasped to keep them from shaking. The room smelled of expensive cologne and tension. Across the table, Vivian adjusted her pearls, her fingers twitching. Richard's arms were crossed, his knuckles white. Cassie tapped her nails, each click a tiny detonation. Kessler unfolded a crisp document, his eyes scanning the page. "William made specific allocations," he said. "To his daughter, Cassandra Harper, he leaves the Napa Valley Vineyard and his vintage Porsche collection." Cassie's smirk faltered. "That's it?" she said, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. Kessler didn't flinch, just kept reading. "To Richard and Vivian Harper, his son and daughter-in-law, He leaves the Aspen Chalet, his rare book collection, and a $50,000 0 cents charitable donation in their name. Vivian let out a choked laugh, like she'd been slapped. "This is absurd," she said, her voice rising. Richard leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You're telling me that's all, after everything we did for him?" Kessler ignored them, his gaze shifting to me. "And to Eleanor Harper," he said, pausing just long enough for the room to hold its breath. "He leaves the controlling shares of Harper Global, valued at approximately $500 million, 0 cents. The silence was deafening. Then Richard exploded. "What?" His chair scraped back, his face red with rage. "That's impossible. She's a traitor. She nearly bankrupted us." Vivian's hand flew to her pearls, her voice shrill. "She hasn't spoken to us in years. She abandoned this family. She doesn't get to waltz in and steal everything." Cassie just stared, her phone forgotten, her eyes boring into me like I'd personally set her world on fire. I didn't move, didn't blink. My heart was a war drum, but my face was stone. Kessler held up a hand. "The will was notarized. William made this change in person 4 months ago. It was deliberate." "That's a lie," Richard snapped. "He was senile. We'll contest it." Kessler reached under the table and pulled out a sealed envelope, its wax stamp bearing William's crest, a hawk in flight. He slid it toward me. My fingers hesitated, then took it, the weight heavier than it should have been. Inside was a folded share certificate and a note in William's looping script. "For the one who dared to speak, you're the heart of this company, Ellie. Don't let them break you." Before I could process it, Richard lunged across the table, snatching the certificate from my hands. "What the hell is this?" he growled, holding it up like evidence of a crime. Vivian grabbed the note, her eyes scanning it before she ripped it in half, then again, the pieces fluttering to the table like ash. "Dared to speak," she spat. "You mean destroyed us?" Cassie leaned back, her smirk returning. "Oh, please, Ellie. You've always played the martyr. Grandpa just felt sorry for you. You don't belong here." I opened my mouth, but Kessler's voice cut through. "Richard, return the document." His tone was steel, but Richard didn't budge. Instead, he pulled a lighter from his pocket, the flame catching the certificate's edge. The paper curled, blackening, smoke curling upward. Cassie pulled out her phone, live-streaming the whole thing, her voice dripping with venom. "This is what happens when you betray your family." The room watched the certificate burn, the ashes falling into a crystal tray. Vivian crossed her arms, smug. "Now we're even," she said. Richard's eyes gleamed with triumph. "You're nothing, Ellie. You never were." I didn't flinch. I didn't reach for the ashes, because what they'd burned wasn't real. William had warned me they'd try to destroy anything they couldn't control. The real shares were safe, wired to a trust in San Francisco, untouchable. The certificate was a decoy, a prop for their rage. I'd found the truth a month ago in William's Lake Tahoe cabin, hidden in a safe behind a painting of the Cascades. He'd known they'd come for me. He'd planned for it. I stood smoothing my jacket and met their eyes one by one. Richard's fury, Vivian's disdain, Cassie's glee. "Enjoy your moment," I said, my voice low but steady. "It won't last." I turned and walked out, the click of my boots on the marble floor echoing like a countdown. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. Outside, the Seattle air was cold, the sky a bruise of gray and gold. I slid into a cab, the driver barely glancing at me. "Pioneer Square," I said, leaning back, my hands still steady despite the adrenaline. The envelope Kessler had given me was tucked inside my jacket, unburned, unopened. I'd read it later, when I wasn't being watched. Because I knew they were. The bomb, the texts, the way Cassie's live stream had already gone viral. Someone was pulling strings, and I was the puppet they wanted to cut loose. The cab dropped me at a run-down motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where the neon sign flickered and the clerk didn't ask for ID. I paid cash, checked in under a fake name, Sarah Blake, and locked the door behind me. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and regret, but it was safe, for now. I sat on the sagging bed, pulled out the envelope and broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, William's handwriting unmistakable. "They'll come for you, Ellie. Not just the money, the power, the truth. Check Vault 42, Cascade Security. Use the key I gave you. Trust no one." The key? I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing the silver key William had given me on my 21st birthday, wrapped in a velvet pouch with one sentence: "This opens your future." Alt thought it was sentimental, a relic from a man who loved riddles. Now, it felt like a lifeline. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "They're moving faster than I thought. Get to Vault 42 before noon." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Who was this? A friend? A foe playing a longer game? I didn't have time to guess. I needed to move. I grabbed my bag, slipped the key into my pocket, and headed out, the motel's gravel lot crunching under my boots. The city was alive now, but I felt like prey. Every passing car a potential threat. Cascade Security was in Bellevue, a 20-minute drive I couldn't risk without a car. I flagged another cab, gave the driver an address 2 blocks away, and kept my eyes on the rearview mirror. Nobody followed, or so I thought. The vault office was a nondescript building, all concrete and tinted glass, the kind of place that screamed discretion. I showed my ID, the clerk barely glancing at it before leading me to a private room. Vault 42 was a steel box, unremarkable except for the weight of what it held. I slid the key in, the lock clicking open with a soft thud. Inside was a share certificate. $500 million, 0 cents. My name in bold. A sealed letter and a microchip the size of a thumbnail wrapped in black foam. I opened the letter first, William's words cutting through the silence. "They'll do anything to keep Harper Global, even erase you. The chip holds the truth. Protect it." I tucked the chip into my pocket, the certificate into my bag, and locked the vault. The clerk didn't ask questions, just nodded as I left. I was halfway to the door when my phone rang. Not a text, a call. Unknown number. I answered, my voice low. "Who is this?" Pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Ellie, it's Cassie." Her tone was soft, almost broken. "I didn't know they'd go this far. The bomb, the certificate, I swear I didn't know. Can we talk, just us?" My blood ran cold. Cassie didn't do remorse. This was a trap, but I needed to know what she was playing at. "Fine," I said. "Waterfront Cafe, 2:00 p.m. Don't bring anyone." I hung up, my mind already mapping exits, contingencies. Cassie wasn't the mastermind. Richard and Vivian were too ruthless for that, but she was dangerous, and I was walking into her game. The cafe was a glass box overlooking Puget Sound, all sleek lines and overpriced lattes. Cassie was already there, in a corner booth, her blonde hair pulled back, her eyes red like she'd been crying. I didn't buy it. I sat across from her, ordered a chamomile tea, and waited. She leaned forward, her voice low. "Ellie, I'm sorry. Mom and Dad, they're out of control. They think you're trying to destroy us." "You live-streamed them burning my future," I said, my tone flat. "Don't play the victim." Her face crumpled, but her eyes flicked to the door. "I had to. They made me. But I want to fix this. Is the share certificate real? The one they burned?" There it was. The real reason she was here. I sipped my tea, letting the silence stretch. "It's gone, Cassie. You saw it burn. Her jaw tightened, just for a second. If it was real, you'd be in danger. More than you know. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Ellie, Mom's talking about contesting the will. Dad's got people watching you. You need to trust me. I stood, slipping on my jacket. Trust you? I'd rather trust the bomb. I walked out, the wind off the sound biting through my clothes. Cassie's words echoed, but it was her glance at the door that stuck with me. Someone was waiting. I didn't look back, but I felt eyes on me, heavy as a storm cloud. By nightfall, I was back at the motel, the microchip hidden in my shoe, the certificate locked in a safe deposit box I'd rented under a fake name. I opened my laptop, using a VPN to check the news. Harper Global's stock was plummeting, and a headline screamed, "Whistleblower heir accused of fraud." Cassie's smear campaign had hit, painting me as a deranged liar trying to steal the company. Social media was worse. Trolls, bots, even my old colleagues piling on. I was a ghost, a villain, a nobody. Then I saw it. A post from Vivian, arm in arm with Cassie, standing in front of Harper Global's headquarters. Caption, "The true Harper stand united." My chest tightened, not from pain, but from clarity. They weren't just after the shares. They wanted me erased, legally, socially, permanently. I closed the laptop, my hands steady now. William's voice echoed in my head. Power doesn't bend, it breaks, or you do. I wasn't breaking. Not tonight. Not ever. I pulled out the burner phone I'd bought at a gas station and dialed a number I'd memorized years ago. Margaret Voss, Seattle's best probate lawyer, answered on the second ring. "I need your help," I said. "They're trying to bury me." Her voice was calm, like she'd been expecting me. "Then let's dig you up." The motel room smelled like despair. Stale cigarettes, damp carpet, and the faint tang of bleach that didn't quite mask the ghosts of past tenants. I sat on the edge of the bed, the springs creaking under my weight, my hands still trembling from the day's chaos. The microchip from Vault 42 pressed against my heel inside my shoe, a tiny weight carrying secrets that could topple an empire. Outside, Tacoma's neon-lit night buzzed faintly, but in here, it was just me, the burner phone, and the echo of Cassie's voice from her voicemail playing on repeat in my head. "I didn't know they'd go that far. Please, Ellie, believe me. I didn't, not for a second." But her words were a crack in the Harper facade, and I'd use it to pry their world apart. I'm Eleanor Harper. Ellie to the few who don't want me dead. A week ago, I was just a whistleblower licking her wounds, scraping by in a Seattle apartment that doubled as my prison. Now, I'm the heir to Harper Global's $500 million 0 cents, controlling shares, a target with a bullseye on my back, and, according to the state of Washington, legally deceased. My family, Richard, Vivian, and Cassie, didn't just burn a fake share certificate to spite me. They erased my identity, faked my death in a plane crash, and rigged a car bomb to make sure I stayed gone. But they underestimated me. And they underestimated William Harper, my grandfather, whose foresight was my only shield. The burner phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. A new text from the unknown number. They'd signed the last one. Vault 42 was just the start. Oregon Storage Unit, Lot 19B. Go now. They're closing in. My pulse quickened. Oregon was a 2-hour drive, and it was already past midnight. I didn't have a car, my accounts were frozen, and every move I made felt like stepping into a trap. But Em knew things. Things only someone deep in Harper Global's orbit could know. A former exec, a disgruntled ally. I couldn't trust them, but I couldn't ignore them either. I grabbed my bag, stuffed the Vault 42 letter and my fake ID inside, and slipped out of the motel. The night air was damp. Tacoma's streets a mix of flickering streetlights and shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. I flagged a cab at a gas station, the driver a grizzled man who smelled of cheap cigars. "Portland," I said, handing him a wad of cash from the emergency stash I'd kept since my whistleblowing days. "No stops," he grunted, and we peeled onto the highway, the city fading into a blur of taillights and regret. The drive was silent, save for the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the driver's radio. I kept my eyes on the side mirror, half expecting headlights to tail us. My mind churned, piecing together the fragments men had left me. The microchip was still unopened. I didn't have a device secure enough to read it, but William's letter had hinted at a truth bigger than the shares. The chip holds the what truth? Harper Global's data mining scandal was bad, but was there something worse? Something Richard and Vivian would kill to keep buried. We hit the Oregon border just before 2:00 a.m., the road narrowing into a stretch of pine woods and cracked asphalt. The storage facility was a ghost town, a chain-link fence sagging under the weight of neglect. A faded sign read Cascade Holdings, but I recognized the logo, a hawk, just like William's crest. This wasn't random. He'd chosen this place, hidden in plain sight, to bury his final move. I paid the driver, told him to keep the change, and waited until his taillights vanished before approaching the gate. The padlock was rusted but intact, and a silver key from Vault 42 fit like it was made for it. The gate screeched open, the sound slicing through the silence. Lot 19B was at the far end, a squat metal unit half covered in ivy. My breath caught as I slid the key into the lock, the mechanism grinding before giving way. The door rolled up, dust swirling in the moonlight, revealing a fireproof briefcase front and center. A note, taped to its lid in William's handwriting. "If they burn you, open this." My hands shook as I knelt, popping the latches. Inside was a tape recorder, a manila folder, and a small velvet pouch. I pressed play on the recorder, and William's voice filled the air, fragile but fierce. "They told me they'd put me in a home, Ellie," he said, each word deliberate. "Vivian brought falsified medical reports, said I was losing it. Richard threatened to leak lies about you to the board, but I saw through them. I left you something they can't touch. You're the legacy they fear." The tape crackled, then cut off. I sat back, my chest tight, tears burning but not falling. He'd known. All along he'd known. The folder held more. A birth certificate, unedited, listing me as Eleanor William Harper, no trace of Richard's surname. A will, notarized, naming me sole executor of Harper Global's trust. And a land deed, granting me ownership of the Seattle headquarters property, the very ground their empire stood on. My breath hitched. This wasn't just about shares. This was about power, roots, the foundation they'd built their lies on. I snapped photos with the burner phone, uploading them to an encrypted cloud drive, my fingers moving on autopilot. 3 backups, 3 locations. They'd never find them. That's when I heard it. A twig snapping outside, sharp and deliberate. My head whipped up, the storage unit's shadows suddenly alive. I shoved the documents into my bag, switched off the recorder, and crouched behind a stack of crates. Footsteps crunched closer, slow, methodical. A beam of light swept through the open door, a flashlight, its arc narrow and precise. My heart pounded, but I stayed still. My training from years in corporate crisis management kicking in. Assess, adapt, acts. The light paused, then swung away. I peered through a gap in the crates, catching a glimpse of a figure, tall, hooded, a rifle slung over their shoulder. Not a random thief, a professional. I held my breath, waiting for them to move on. They didn't. The figure stepped inside, their boots heavy on the concrete. I gripped the pouch, my fingers brushing something hard inside. A key, smaller than the last, with a tag, San Francisco Archives. Next clue. A shot rang out, the bullet grazing my arm, searing pain ripping through me. I bit back a scream, diving behind the crates as another shot splintered the wood above my head. Blood trickled down my sleeve, warm and sticky. But I didn't stop. I scrambled toward the back of the unit, where a rusted vent hung loose. I yanked it open, the metal screeching, and crawled through, tumbling into the woods outside. Branches clawed at my face as I ran, the sniper's footsteps crashing behind me. The forest was a maze, dark and unforgiving, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes, maybe hours, until my legs gave out near a creek, the water's gurgle masking my ragged breaths. I tore a strip from my shirt, wrapping it around my arm to stem the bleeding. The pain was a dull roar, but I was alive. For now. I checked the burner phone, miraculously intact, and saw a new message from M. "You're not safe. San Francisco Historical Archive, File 7C. Code, Cockflight. Hurry." I wanted to scream. Hurry where? I was bleeding, hunted and alone, with no car and no plan. But Ames' clues had kept me alive so far. I had to trust them. Or at least pretend to. Dawn was breaking when I stumbled onto a back road, flagging down a trucker who didn't ask questions. "Portland," I said, climbing in, my voice hoarse. He nodded, and we drove in silence, the hum of the engine lulling me into a half-sleep haunted by William's voice. "You're the legacy they fear." By the time we hit the city, I'd patched together a plan. I needed Margaret Voss, the lawyer I'd called last night. She'd promised to dig me up, and I was counting on her to do it before my family buried me for real. I used a payphone at a gas station to call her, my hands still shaking. "Margaret, it's Ellie. I've got evidence. Documents, a tape, a chip, but they're trying to kill me. I was shot at last night." Her voice was calm, like she'd heard worse. "Where are you?" "Portland. I'm heading to San Francisco. There's an archive file I need to check." "Stay off the grid," she said. "I'm filing a probate challenge today citing fraud and coercion. Send me the documents, encrypted. And Ellie, don't trust anyone, not even me, until you're sure." I hung up, my stomach churning. Not even her? I uploaded the files to her secure server, then bought a bus ticket to San Francisco, using the last of my cash. The bus was a rattling beast, its passengers a mix of drifters and dreamers, none of whom glanced my way. I kept my hood up, my arm throbbing under the makeshift bandage. Every jolt of the bus felt like a reminder I was alive, but I was prey. San Francisco greeted me with fog and the salty tang of the bay. The historical archive was a stone building tucked between skyscrapers, its facade carved with eagles and forgotten names. I slipped inside, my fake ID passing scrutiny, and asked for File 7C. The clerk, a woman with wire-rimmed glasses, frowned. "That's restricted. You need a code." "Park flight," I said, my voice steady despite the blood loss making my head swim. She nodded, disappearing into a vault, and returned with a sealed box. I took it to a private booth, my hands trembling as I broke the seal. Inside was a single file labeled Harper Betrayal and a note from Min. "This is why they fear you. Decipher it, and you'll own them." The file was a shareholder agreement dated a year before William's death, transferring 10% of Harper Global's voting rights to a rival firm, Nexus Corp. Richard's signature was on it, notarized, undeniable. Corporate treason. If this went public, he'd be ruined, and Harper Global would be vulnerable to a takeover. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from Cassie, her voice frantic. "Ellie, if you're alive, I didn't sign the death certificate. They forced me. Dad's working with someone big. Please, don't shut me out. I saved it, my lips curling into a bitter smile. Thanks for the confession, sis. I'd use it, just not the way she hoped. I was about to leave when a sharp pain hit my chest, my vision blurring. The coffee I'd grabbed at the Archives Cafe, tainted, I realized too late. I collapsed, gasping as a figure loomed over me. "You're harder to kill than they said," a man's voice rasped, then a prick in my arm, an antidote, sharp and cold, pulling me back from the edge. When I opened my eyes, he was gone, but a note was tucked into my pocket. "M says you're close. Came in accounts." Now, my heart raced. M had saved me, but why? And who was close enough to poison me? I stumbled outside, the fog swallowing me whole. My arm ached, my head spun, but I kept moving. Margaret called as I reached the bus station. "Ellie, the board knows you're alive. Your old colleague Nate leaked your location. They're voting to oust you before you can claim the shares." "Neat?" I whispered, betrayal cutting deeper than the bullet. He'd been my ally during the whistleblowing, or so I'd thought. "Can you stop them?" "I'm trying," she said. "But there's more. The car bomb? It wasn't meant to kill you. Richard staged it to scare you into running. He's playing a long game." I froze, the pieces clicking into place. A scare, not a murder. They wanted me broken, not dead. "Yet." "File the challenge," I said. "I'm sending you the Nexus deal. It's enough to bury them." Back in Seattle, I checked into another motel, this one even grimmier than the last. The clerk, a kid with a nose ring, had been my contact, passing me burner phones and food. But when I caught him slipping a tracker into my bag, my blood ran cold. "Cassie paid you, didn't she?" I said, my voice low. He bolted, but I didn't chase him. Another betrayal, another reminder, trust no one. Margaret's probate challenge hit the courts the next morning, backed by William's affidavit, the tape, and Cassie's texts. The hearing was a bloodbath. Margaret played the video. William, gaunt but fierce, accusing Richard of blackmail. Vivian of forgery. Cassie's texts begging William to stick to the script sealed their fate. Then came the shock. Cassie had been working with Nexus Corp, feeding them intel to fuel their takeover bid. Richard stormed out. Vivian collapsed, and Cassie's double-dealing fractured the family for good. Judge Amelia Carter's ruling was swift. I was the sole heir, the Harpers' assets frozen, a federal investigation launched. Outside, I faced a swarm of reporters, my voice steady as I spoke. They burned my name, but I rose from their ashes. The crowd roared, but I felt no triumph, only peace. That night, atop Harper Global's headquarters, the city sprawling below, I opened a final message from M. "The real war starts now." Came in accounts. The San Francisco file had one last secret. A hidden heir, William's secret son, now a Nexus exec, poised to challenge me. I gripped the share certificate, my resolve ironclad. They'd tried to break me. They'd failed. The fight was just beginning.